why is it wrong to protect you, the American worker, from the communist Chinese government? And President Trump responded to this, the tariffs on truth. He said, all caps, China played it wrong. They panicked. The one thing they cannot afford to do. Before we get into why it's actually better for you to not panic right away, please, I've seen some people out there going, I'm pulling everything out. So buy high and sell low. There's an interesting strategy. Just
locking in those losses.
Yes,
Woo!
exactly. Just hold on a little bit. But there are some reasons for the tariffs. We talked about this really for the last several months, saying there's going to be some discomfort. And that's not to minimize the discomfort. But at a certain point, you do have to understand and you do have to make a choice. Okay, do we want to live in a world where we continue to lose our manufacturing, where we continue to lose our national economy because of a foreign communist adversary who is subsidizing industry with the expressed goal of destroying our national economy? At some point, there needs to be a change, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to get to why this has taken place. Before we get to that, though, the panic. Okay, let me just give you some very clear historical context. In 2008, right, it was way worse than this. Let's grab this overlay. In 2008, there was a point, if you look there, you go, oh my gosh, look, this is terrible. I have to sell. The market it's done. But then if you just zoom out, if you'd have done nothing, look, you would have more than doubled. In some case, if you were in the dip, tripled your money. Let me be really clear. The market wins out. There are people out there who want to pick stocks and give you a hot ticket. They don't do any better than a monkey throwing darts at a board. Random walk. That is true. But then there are people who tell you, and putting anything in the stock market is like, it's like playing roulette. It's like playing the lottery. No, it is not. The market over time will always win out if you rebalance and if you're disciplined and you don't panic. Okay? That is one thing that is constant. It's something that Toolman has talked about, that people here were very conservative in our investment strategy with our wealth. If you panicked and sold, and there were some people who did that in 2008, that's the wrong. Let me give you again, COVID. Yeah. Remember COVID? There's a day, oh my gosh, it's done, it's over. Some people panicked and sold. Okay, I've lost everything. Now let's just zoom out a couple of years. If you did nothing, you not only get it all back, you would have gotten it all back and significantly outpaced the inflation that followed.
This happens every single time. Every single time. And I have been on some calls with some of the best minds out there who talk about investing for some other stuff that I've done. And they are honest. They're like, you want to look at these trends? You want to look at those trends? Fine, you can look at those trends. You know what it is? Time in the market. Period. Right. Doesn't matter. Just put your money in and leave it in as long as you possibly can.
And I say this because we would be doing you a disservice if we, and I know that some of you will be upset at this anyway and say that I'm a Wall Street show. I'm not. I absolutely am not. And I hate that Wall Street wants to privatize profits and socialize losses. Yeah. That is not capitalism. No. It is not free enterprise. I am a conservative in spite of the crony capitalism that we have seen in this country. I am a conservative as it relates to healthcare. I'm anti-socialized healthcare in spite of effectively the pseudo-nationalization that we've seen with insurance companies. Okay, that is not free market capitalism. It sucks today. It may suck for a while. It's painful, and I understand that, but discipline is just as important today as it was yesterday, and it will be tomorrow. Okay, this will pass, and it's been a lot worse for significantly longer periods of time. This is not unexpected as it relates to the tariffs. It would never be consequence-free, but this doesn't change the reason that they had been implemented in the first place, which brings us to the latest installment of the Tariffier. Still the best singer potentially ever seen.
Got to get that shirt.
And you guys comment below, especially anyone who's been through this, what kind of rebound you saw, and people who are going through it right now who might find yourself in a tough spot. Talk in the chat and in the comment section. Like people there who are a little bit older, wiser, please do help some folks, because you have some kids who are, and by kids I mean younger people who feel like they want to swallow a knife. We're not there. So when the patient, in this case, our trade agreements, in this case, our national economy. And I'm no longer anti-protectionism, to be clear. Because if you're protecting your economy from a communist foreign adversary, isn't that a good thing? I understand economic protectionism if you are basically siloing yourself off from the world, right? Where you're rejecting new technology, more efficient methods of goods and of creating or delivering goods and services. That's not what we're talking about. These tariffs are designed to silo the supervillain of the world who's been taking advantage for a very long time. And we'll get into some shocking numbers. References are always available every single show regarding manufacturing, regarding deficits. The premise is not something that can be disputed. So this is where we end up. All right. Yep. China has been using our system, many loopholes to take advantage of us and to basically tear apart at the carcass that is the United States national economy. Manufacturing, as far as intellectual property, you look at our trade agreements, it's never actually been fair. That is something that cannot be disputed. So now you say, okay, where do we line up on how to deal with this? Status quo, keep doing it because we're all comfortable with this, or at some point you're going to come home to roost and we'd rather deal with it now before this gets worse. It kind of is an A or B, and that's where we find ourselves. When the patient is sick, in this case, our national economy, medicine can have an adverse reaction initially. It doesn't mean that it's not necessary, and that's what President Trump spoke to regarding his new tariff policy last night, I believe, on Air Force One.
Is there a Trump put, though? Is there pain in the market at some point? You're unwilling to tolerate this idea of a Trump put? Is there a threshold?
I think your question is so stupid. I think it's I don't want anything to go down, but sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something, and we have such a horrible. We have been treated so badly by other countries because we had stupid leadership that allowed this to happen.
True.
True.
Very stupid leadership.
So, the markets are down across the board, right? Japan was, the Japanese markets were down 7.8%. Korea was 5.1. China was 7.3. Australia 4.2. Germany 6.8. And as of the time of this broadcast at 11:30 Eastern, the U.S. market, I guess it's down now about 2.25%. It's moving around a lot.
Yeah.
So that brings us to, okay, what were the reasons for these tariffs? How severe are these consequences? And really, how long are they going to last? Let's go through the reasons. They haven't changed. First reason, okay? To try and use these tariffs to get countries to negotiate as a leverage tool. Not the only reason, but one of them, right? And according now to the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, 50 countries at least have reached out to the United States to try and negotiate tariffs.
More than 50 countries have approached the administration about lowering their non-tariff trade barriers, lowering their tariffs, stopping currency manipulation. And they've been bad actors for a long time, and it's not the kind of thing you can negotiate away in days or weeks.
And here's the good news. When you're talking about these tariffs, when you're talking about executive orders, if these countries play ball, they can change like that. It could be instant. Yeah. They can come to the table instantly, and we can negotiate instantly. There is some value in it. There are pros and cons. And this was just happening this morning, I believe. The EU just offered to introduce zero tariffs on specifically industrial goods.
And this is a major turning point for the United States. Nonetheless, we stand ready to negotiate with the United States.
We stand ready?
Indeed, we have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods, as we have successfully done with many other trading partners, because Europe is always ready for a good deal, so we keep it on the table.
Two things. Why had you done it with other trading partners and not us? Screw you for that. Two, we stand now ready to negotiate. Like, she acts like they're getting ready for, we stand now ready to say, Uncle?
We don't do it sitting down.
That's right.
And by the way, that's
we are brave and courageous.
Industrial goods, that's the vast majority of our trade. So
yes,
percentage-wise, that's huge. That's not just some random thing that's getting thrown around out there. So that's a big, big, big deal. By the way, I want to go back what Scott Bessent said, which is really rude to have that in there. It makes it hard to pronounce his name. He said it's not just about tariffs. It's about other things that these countries have done to us to keep our goods and companies out of their country and competing with them or exporting to them, right?
Right.
It's trade barriers. Trade barrier can be like, well, I don't like how you take care of, some kind of a toxin or some kind of a bacteria in your chicken. I don't like that you do that. We do something similar to it, but we do it in a different way, and I don't like that, so therefore you can't do it. I don't have a tariff on it.
China said, you mean you do nothing?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you a treat?
We do nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, nothing, not okay. Okay. We do something.
Speaking of which, China, currency manipulation. Instead of letting your currency float where it should, right, where the market demands it goes, you artificially do something to it to make your goods, I don't know, cheaper on the world market, like China is theoretically doing or would do right now to stay competitive. All of that hurts U.S. businesses, all of it. And we've just gotten so used to it that we're just like, fine.
Right. And it's, by the way, this is not free enterprise. It's not. Here's one thing, too. Yep, there's a problem with unions in the United States. I understand that. Yes, where it makes it cost prohibitive for certain goods. But the American worker, even the non-union American worker, the taxpayer, you're not competing with an honest, you're not even necessarily competing with slave labor in the third world. As it relates to China, you are competing with slave labor that is still not profitable, so the Chinese Communist government subsidizes it.
Yeah.
You cannot win. And China's okay doing it so long as it cuts us off at the knees. Do you understand that? And we're talking about where are we? Hold on a second, this timeline, because last week I thought they were saying we don't have tariffs. Saying, well, we don't. Donald Trump said reciprocal tariffs. They said, well, we don't really have those. But now they're saying, well, we're going to introduce zero tariffs. Well, what are you introducing? What are you standing tall to introduce?
You know what makes this particularly egregious with the EU? After the Second World War, the United States basically said, we're the richest country on the planet right now, and to make sure that your economies get back into the global order, and it's better for safety and stability, I get it, but to make sure that you guys can rebuild, we will have an imbalance.
Right.
We will help you guys do this. And then to get treated like that, like, well, are you serious?
Yeah, we're like, okay, we're going to help you get back. Wait. How are you giving everyone free internet? Wait, you still haven't spent your amount in NATO. Wait a second, you're giving everyone free healthcare, but we invent the drugs. Wait, hold on. This wasn't the deal. By the way, Argentina has come to the table as well. Malay said that Argentina was working on a zero tariff deal with the United States. Currently, their tariffs average around 10 to 13%.
Where is he sending the tariffs?
What was that?
Afuera.
Yes, exactly.
I was hoping to get one from Billy.
I thought there was an answer that I didn't know. I'm like, wait, what?
I was hoping
Does he say? Afuera.
There we go. Yeah.
Vietnam, we talked about them last week. They offered to remove all tariffs on American goods. Their current average rate is about 9.4%. Taiwan, actually, the president, Lai Ching-te,
oh boy,
wrote on X, Taiwan does not seek retaliatory tariffs
That's not
against.
How she sounds. Come on.
No, I'm saying it because they sound. This is one like they sound more American. They sound more American. It's like this is the Chinese trying to be American.
Yeah.
Taiwan does not seek retaliatory tariffs against the United States. Instead, we'll start talking from bilateral zero tariffs. To ensure Taiwan's competitiveness, we'll increase U.S. imports and adopt other measures. Working together will usher in a golden age of shared prosperity. I got away from you.
Oh, man. So close.
Current rate average is about 6.5%. So over 50 plus countries, these are the ones that we know about. You can say it's not enough. Sure, I understand that. But you can't say that it's insignificant when that's one of the primary goals of these tariffs. By the way, Ireland seems to be the most desperate. They actually sent this open video plea to President Trump this morning.
Dear President Trump, we the people of Ireland are humbly begging you to undo this tragedy your presidency has caused the Irish people. We can no longer survive under these conditions. Please, oh please, take back Rosie O'Donnell. We don't even care about the tariffs. Truly. In fact, I'll do you one further. We will take on other countries' tariffs if you'll just take this monster off our hands. We haven't enough potatoes on the island for the appetite of... Oh, shite, I think she's here. Oh, for the love of God and all that is holy. Oh, now she's stopping in and demanding more potatoes.
Oh. Sometimes you don't really know.
That's really what the president of Ireland looks like.
Yeah,
he
it's
looks
true.
like a leprechaun.
Well, you don't really understand until you see how it affects real folks.
Real folks.
Name that movie line. Here's reason number 2 for the tariffs. And this is going to take a little while, but is the reindustrializing of the United States. The numbers are shocking. Now, I want you to keep in context the reason that this manufacturing has been siphoned is not because of automation, is not because of us entering into the modern workforce. No, it's because of communist subsidized slave labor. In other words, slave labor isn't enough to beat the United States to the goods and services punch when you're seeing this from China. It is subsidized. You cannot be a small business in the United States and compete with the Chinese Communist government who doesn't care about losses. As a matter of fact, it's not a bug, it's a feature. Please comment if you understand the difference. A small business in the United States competing against a small business in Germany, or a medium-sized business in the United States competing against a medium-sized business in Taiwan is very, very different from a business in the USA competing against a communist government who is willing to subsidize losses in order to drive you out of business. So Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, he actually talked about this on Face the Nation.
The army of millions and millions of human beings screwing in little screws to make iPhones, that kind of thing is going to come to America. It's going to be automated, and great Americans, the trade craft of America, is going to fix them, is going to work on them. They're going to be mechanics. There's going to be HVAC specialists. There's going to be electricians. The trade craft of America, our high school educated Americans, the core to our workforce is going to have the greatest resurgence of jobs in the history of America to work on these high-tech factories, which are all coming to America. That's what's going to build our next generation of America.
Let me give you some numbers on manufacturing jobs, okay? In 1999, before most of the new policies that we see regarding China came into play, the manufacturing jobs in America, they were about 17.5 million. Today, they're about 12.5 million. Now, here's what's even more startling. If you look at the global manufacturing share from the United States, how much of the global manufacturing we made up. Okay, 1995, we made up 24%, China was 5%. Compared to today, where we make up 15% and China makes up 32%. Jeez. We went from 24% to 15%, and China went from 5% to 32%. That occurs nowhere in nature, and certainly not for a country where most of those people live in abject poverty and eat street food fried in sewer water. And that's not a joke. That's the reality for those people. Again, bring up the overlay for those who doubt it. You can check the references. China subsidizes their industries to create more than can possibly be consumed, to dump it on a market and ensure that you are run out of business. They're not even doing this to turn a profit. They're doing it to end your business, your industry.
So I want to go back to something that Howard said there, because this is one of those very fine people clips. Everybody this weekend was sharing that after he had that appearance on Sunday morning and saying that Howard Lutnick was basically saying, oh, good, we're going to have thousands and millions of jobs created by people screwing in tiny little screws. And they were like, great, sweatshop labor is coming to the United States. Without playing the clip for 2 more seconds where we said, and we're going to automate that. Basically, he's saying we don't need sweatshop labor. Shouldn't this be good? Right. We can actually automate this process. We can get rid of sweatshop labor because that's just taking advantage of a workforce. Obviously, you have to retrain that workforce and move them into something else. But isn't this a good thing? And they're like, he's bringing sweatshop labor to the United States. That's not at all what he said there. But this is another time, instead of dealing with the facts that you just gave them, you can deal with that. You can go, sweatshop labor. I don't have to deal with the fact that China's kicking our butts in manufacturing.
And I understand, too, the argument that people will make regarding automation. We have this argument all the time regarding AI.
For sure.
Well, you'll automate Americans out of jobs. That can happen, or if you can automate menial, low-skilled tasks, it allows more high-paying, skilled labor jobs for Americans. And that's what we've seen. For example, you've seen plenty of companies who moved to subsidized sweatshop labor in China. Apple did that. And then what do? Well, then they expanded rapidly. Then they created new products and services. They had more manpower. They had more brain power to focus on the kinds of advances that you have seen where you, frankly, have more in common. Well, they actually say, they've talked about this. They've said that young people today are so different as far as they've grown up in the era of a smartphone, that people born in the 1970s had more in common with someone from the time of Jesus Christ. Literally. Than pre-smartphone, pre-modern computers than they would with today's generation. Now, you can argue if technology has been a good thing or a bad thing. But when Apple started using the subsidized slave labor in China, They became the Apple that you know today.
Yeah.
So wouldn't we rather not have slave labor, sweatshop labor, automate some jobs here onshore, and chance these companies providing more jobs? We've talked about that with mugs. There was not an American manufacturer that could meet the demand for mugs because of the kinds of policies that we have seen. So it is made overseas, and we have Americans who etch it and paint it, and that pays a lot more than the bulk cost of mugs. By the way, if you're an American mug manufacturer and you can, please reach out. We still haven't found them. You need to be able to create many, many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of mugs like that. No one could do it. So the skilled labor goes to Americans because that's the only possibility. Let's go to Apple and look at them. 2001. That's when they started this huge partnership with China to set up their manufacturing, their housing, their factories, right, roads, all this stuff with the Chinese government in order to set up their manufacturing there. What happened? They became the most valuable company for the United States. Mm-hmm. But a lot of that money is going to a foreign adversary. Yes. Wouldn't you rather have those headquarters here? Would you rather have something automated in the United States and everyone else at Apple employed here, or instead of automation, Chinese slave labor? Again, you do have to kind of look at it and make your choice. There's a reason for it, because with Apple, it led to a huge loss in American jobs and a huge trade deficit, which has been described by Donald Trump many times and is one of the reasons for these tariffs.
Hundreds of billions of dollars a year we lose with China, and unless we solve that problem, I'm not going to make a deal. Now, I'm willing to deal with China, but they have to solve their surplus. We have a tremendous deficit problem with China. They have a surplus of at least $1 trillion a year. I think it's like $1.1 trillion, and I want that solved. And no other president's taken it on. I had to take it on the last time, and then we had a rigged election. We're not going to lose $1 trillion for the privilege of buying pencils from China.
The privilege of buying pencils from China. He's putting a finer point on it, and by the way, he's mostly correct. This brings us to the third reason, and the primary reason. Beating China's ass, okay? That's a big reason for this. We have a very skewed economy, and we have a very significant enemy. I don't know that an enemy has been more underestimated than China in modern history to the United States, especially when you look at exactly what they say they aim to do and exactly how they refer to us, how they treat us. So now, in response to retaliatory tariffs, China said there's going to be a retaliatory to retaliatory tariffs, another 34% tariff on U.S. products. And what's funny is China, yes, the communist government of China accused the United States of economic bullying.
The pursuit of so-called fairness is more than just America
so
first,
are you
but
Chinese
American
or Japanese?
exceptionalism. That's the stance that China has taken on U.S. sweeping tariffs against trading partners around the globe. In a statement on Saturday, Beijing said Washington's move infringes on other countries' legitimate rights, violates World Trade Organization rules, harms the rules-based multilateral trading system, and disrupts global economic stability.
Good.
It also labeled U.S. tariffs as an act of unilateralism, protectionism, and economic bullying.
What? We're bullying? We're bullying? Hey, what do you do to Christian converts in China? Hey, hold on a second. We're bullying? How do you treat your workers there in China? I just want to understand. Are people allowed to speak out against the government, just to your own citizens? Then we're bullying. What kind of tariffs have you had against the United States? What kind of industries have you subsidized specifically to take out business in the United States, to take food from the mouths of our children? You accuse us of bullying, and this term protectionism, and I was more libertarian, where, again, that was a dirty word. Yeah, protecting us from China, protecting us from communism. Let me ask you this. We weren't major trading partners, obviously, with the Soviet Union. But if during the Cold War, if you guys understand, we said, okay, well, obviously we're not going to be paying for it. We're not going to be supplying Russia through trade.
Right.
Through economic exchange. We're going to have a moratorium. We're going to have a ban on purchasing anything from, why? Because they're a nuclear nation who wants to wipe us off the face of the map. How do we know? Because they've said so, right? You would never bet on it. You go, okay, that makes sense. They're an enemy. Why is it wrong to protect you, the American worker, from the communist Chinese government? And President Trump responded to this, the tariffs on truth. He said, all caps, China played it wrong. They panicked. The one thing they cannot afford to do.
Well, if they panicked before, they're going to be crapping in their small little britches right now. Donald Trump just posted something else, threatening threatened a 50% tariff if they didn't remove their 34% additional tariff in response to us.
Wow.
So China responds with 34% more, I guess. They're going to do it. And then Donald Trump's like, well, if you don't pull that off by Tuesday, close of business, I believe is what it is. Then on Wednesday, 50% goes into effect on you. That's pretty ballsy.
That's pretty ballsy.
It's pretty ballsy. And by the way, it's very rich for the Chinese government to accuse anybody else of doing things unilaterally or for protectionist methods or using protectionist methods to kind of destabilize. This is the most protectionist economy that has ever existed in the history of mankind. They manipulate everything about their economy to the detriment of the rest of the world. And the rest of the world, the only reason that we stand there and go, okay, fine, is because of cheap labor.
Right.
If we could find another place tomorrow to do super duper cheap labor and it could be spun up very quickly, we'd go there.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you allowed to even wave an American flag in China?
Oh,
It's just funny they say we're bullies.
I doubt it.
We're bullies here in the United States. They can never course correct because they kill people who speak out against the communist fascism that takes place.
They got to be careful, too. They keep raising the tariffs on us. We're like their number 2 soybean importer. Goodbye, soy sauce.
Yep.
No more free packets of soy sauce with your beef and broccoli.
Yeah.
You got to pay for that.
Now how are your men going to grow tits?
Yeah.
Good luck.
But even China saying the quiet part out loud. You do have a choice to make. This is a restructuring of the global economy. China communist. Now, you do have to pick, what world do you want to live in? A world where China dictates the terms or the United States? The United States is not perfect. Would you rather live under de facto international Chinese rule or the United States? That is the pick you have to make. And the finance professor of Tsinghua University actually gave a pretty honest take of this, said, we're willing to take on challenge. We're ready to compete with the USA in redefining the global trade system. Meaning this is not going to be what we once knew. This is not we get to benefit from slave labor that's subsidized by a communist nation because we like some cheap trinkets here in the United States. We have to rip off the Band-Aid and no longer support our adversaries abroad, and we have to start looking out for the United States. That is what we are seeing, an entire reconstruction of the global economy. You've been saying you want to fight globalists. This is what it looks like. It's decoupling from the most powerful communist force that is. Do you understand? To give you an idea, the people that we are talking about, the reason for these tariffs, let's just laser in here. These tariffs are designed to address the nation that has stolen our manufacturing, that has stolen a lot of our intellectual property, technology, businesses. And this nation still venerates the single most deadly communist regime that has ever taken place on earth. Mao, it's not even close. They still have statues and posters. It's not like they course corrected. What you can at least say about Russia, okay, all right, Stalin, we're not like, they still have the little red book out there.
It's a lot different than us having Confederate statues.
Right. This is to address the government that is, call it the protege of Mao. Depending who you ask, it's 30 million to 100 million people killed from that communist regime.
Yeah.
And they're still blatantly self-avowed communists. All of a sudden, some tariffs seem kind of mild, don't they? And why have we gone this long without addressing it? Seems to me that should have happened right away when we started opening up some kind of international trade relations. Well, hold on a second. That whole running people over with tanks, the whole tens of millions of people who you guys starved to death in the name of communism, right? You're done with that, right? Otherwise, we're not going to be business pals. No one ever did. No one ever did. And Wall Street kept telling us they were going to be the next great superpower, and we just had to accept it. It's Mao. You want to do business? You want to allow Mao's government to take your job? What are we doing? What are we thinking?
It doesn't make any sense. And so in 2003, you had Warren Buffett write an article that actually decried a situation where we had we had an imbalance of basically ownership, right? Money that was actually just being sucked out of our economy to the rest of the world versus what the rest of the world was contributing to us. And around that time, it was just under $3 trillion. That's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Warren Buffett, who a guy right now who says tariffs are terrible, and he's the only billionaire in the top 20 who's actually increased his fortune. He's a pretty smart guy. He's not going to get everything right, but he raised the alarm in 2003. that was when we were bringing China like full force into everything as much as possible. He said that was a bad thing. Now it's $23 trillion. That's the kind of deficit. And so just think about that right now. Since he raised the alarm, an additional $20 trillion being sucked out of our economy. Think about tentacles in the United States from everywhere else in the world sucking the lifeblood out of our economy.
Yeah.
That's what it's like. And we think we can just innovate our way out of this. And to some degree you can, but innovation typically it's happening really closely to manufacturing. And so when you get rid of all your manufacturing, that's where the innovation occurs.
Yeah.
Why do you think China has made such a great leap forward in innovation and technology? It's because all the manufacturing's happening over there.
Yeah.
You have to be able to pull this stuff back. We have known this forever. Donald Trump's on video talking about this in the 80s.
Yes.
Talking about all these problems. Like, this is not a new thing. And there are plenty of people, economists will tell you one way or the other, it'll happen, and they'll be 100% sure, and you have people all over the spectrum, right? But there are plenty of very smart people who've been in the business world, who have to deal with this on a daily basis, not in academia, who tell you, you have to fix this. The problem is that we didn't fix it under George Bush or Barack Obama.
Because the profits were too good.
Exactly. The companies just turned a blind eye. We're making too much money.
Yep.
And now we're about to die.
Donald Trump is the hipster of hating China.
He is. He's been doing it for
I hated this. Look, frankly, I despised the chinks before it was cool.
He'd say it like that in the 80s. It was fine.
Sooner or later, those zipperheads will have to pay. I've always said this.
Insane.
And by the way, for those of you who are still with us, before I actually mentioned Tim Pool, this actually just came in from, I believe the Military Journal, 1945. Intelligence analysts have said that they expect the Chinese invasion of Taiwan within the next 6 months. And of course, that could be catastrophic as far as semiconductors, chips. We've discussed this before. If you are not a Rumble Premium member, we're going to discuss this and more, how to address this, the markets. We've talked about the tariffs, addressing the markets. There are people like Ben Shapiro and there are people like Benny Johnson. There are people on the left and on the right who are addressing it as though either this is idiotic and supporting it is ridiculous, or, hey, you don't need that iPhone. I think these are wrong approaches. We'll get into that and have some clips. But before that, you had something you wanted to tell me, right, Noodles?
I was just letting you know that research had chimed in about the flag thing. They said there's no definitive laws saying that you can't. You could do things at like the Olympics, for example.
Okay.
However, Hong Kongers used American flags in their protests, if that tells you anything.
Oh, there you go.
They knew how to piss off the Chinese.
Yeah. And that said, you can manufacture them there. In 2017, 99.5% of the American flags that we brought in came from China.
Oh, lovely.
Not mine. I stitched my own.
There you go, Betty Ross.
That's right.
Betsy
So
Ross.
before we look, this readjustment, I would argue, is absolutely necessary. If you disagree, you can let me know. There are always going to be short-term growing pains, and I do believe that these are short-term. I do believe in the end it's necessary, and I think that we'll come out better for it. And I certainly think that Donald Trump is making a significant effort. Hey, if you like this video, you can hit the notification bell there to know when new videos come out, because I don't think subscriptions are still a thing on YouTube, but you know, you're an adult, most likely, so you can just choose one of the videos here to keep watching. And hopefully it's similar. I don't know what it is.